Welcome to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine.
MotorWeek is made possible by Auto Value and Bumper to Bumper and TireRack.com.
Here's your MotorWeek podcast host, John Davis.
Welcome to MotorWeek podcast number 361. I am your host, John Davis, and this is a very special episode, one of a series of podcasts to celebrate our 45th anniversary season. And with that, we're also recording a video version of the podcast. We are a TV show after all. So if you want to watch this podcast, you can do that at our MotorWeek YouTube channel. And another reason that we are doing video today is our very special guest who is joining us. Our anniversary seasons are a great excuse to look back at how we got to where we are today and to talk to the folks that made up the crew that helped make this show possible for so long, for 45 years, which is an eternity in our business. So for the next year, we'll periodically have MotorWeek alumni on, both audio and video, to reminisce about the experiences from over their years on the show. And what better guest to kick off this series than the guy who not only left his signature on the first 2 decades of MotorWeek, but also, besides being on the debut show in 1981, actually was a key player in formulating the pilot way back in 1978. He is most well known for his fun and quirky high road segments, but also for the level of spontaneity and humor that he brought to everything he did on MotorWeek. Welcome back to MotorWeek, the one and only Craig Singhaus.
Hey, thank you, John.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Boy, we are great. It's just glad to have you with us.
It's always fun to come back here. It really is. You know, it's funny because I was listening to the introduction for the podcast, and they said, television's original.
Yep.
And that's true. When we went on the air in, I guess it was 81, right?
There really wasn't much
yeah.
TV out there.
Not on the automotive sense.
No, there had been, there was a short annual show that was done on public television out of Chicago.
Right.
They talked about new cars. There was a show in Australia called Torque, which I looked at sort of when we were talking about putting the show together. And that was about it. As a matter of fact, there really hadn't been very many video road tests done of any.
Right. No, I remember. And the thing is, what amazes me is not only we were basically breaking new ground there, most everybody thought we were nuts for doing it because, it'll go 13 weeks in.
Yeah, you and I would talk about it. Well, this will be fun to do for a while. This will be a good gig. Hey, I got to stop before we get too far into it and introduce the young lady that's sitting right next to me. Most of you have heard her voice on many of our podcasts, our digital producer, Jessica Ray.
Hello.
There she is.
Happy to be here.
Now,
always happy to see Craig.
Jessica is in charge of all of our social media, so she, better than anyone else, is in communications with our fans on social media. She's got questions for you that they want to ask.
Oh, I didn't know there was a quiz.
I have like a lot of. Oh, cool. I can't wait to pick your brain. That's really
fun.
what it is.
It may be empty, but we'll go with the best we can.
I want you to go back to the very beginning with the association. Let's go back to 1978. And I had this harebrained idea of bringing the automotive print magazine to TV on a weekly basis. We found that we could do the name MotorWeek. We did a search, and at the time, nobody was using it. And we did a pilot here at Maryland Public Television, and I tapped you for the pilot. But what were you doing about that time here at MPT?
Well, I was doing freelance here. I was a prop boy. I was the makeup boy. I was the costume person.
The jack of all trades.
Yeah, exactly. And they, do you know how to do that? I'm going, no, I really don't. But yes, of course, And I was working for my dad in his hardware store, and
But you had a theater background,
right? Yeah, I graduated from what they call, it's McDaniel College now, but in those days it was Western Maryland. Yeah. And I genuinely thought when I was in college I'd be doing, dinner theater someplace, And to be honest with you, I was always, though, kind of attracted to television. I had come down here and done a little bit of intern work and stuff like that. And so, I was, oh my gosh, John Davis wants to talk to me.
Well, you know why? Number one, I found out you had some theatrical training, so I thought that would be a good thing for the show to have.
Yeah.
Somebody that actually is comfortable in front of the camera, because I wasn't. And humor.
What, John? You weren't comfortable in front of the camera?
No, I wasn't. In those early days, I had done news, TV news locally, when I was in college. But that's a fairly straight to the camera, read script, and it was pretty serious stuff. And everybody knew you were funny. Okay, number one. And that's hard to be on television.
Oh, thank you.
And you also had a Mustang sitting in the parking lot.
Well, and I always assumed I got the job because I had a noisy Mustang. So I mean,
that was. I'm
glad there was fine. There was other thought to your hiring me. But yeah, no, and I don't know if you remember when we first shot the first show. I guess it was like 4 or 5 days before we were putting the whole thing together. They lost the audio for the car pulling away.
Which was your car.
Well, yeah, the car pulling away, I think, was a modified Ford Fairmont we had taped over the taillights or something.
That was what the taillights were.
Yes, right, but the noise was my car. And ironically enough, and they were scrambling that morning, who can we get a car? And I had literally, show you how little I knew, I had literally...
I had forgot that.
Yeah, I had literally tried to retune my 2-barrel carburetor, and I'd rejetted it, and I rejetted it too rich, and so the plugs were slightly fouled, and they gave it that blah, 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 blah. And it worked out great, Oh,
it became a signature for the show.
Yeah,
it still is today.
It's always been fun. So.
Yeah, the actual taillights that we used on that original, which was a live shot at that time, now it's animation, were the taillights from a Ford Fairmont.
Yeah, but we kind of taped it over so it looked more generic.
It looked more generic. So that's a good memory. But no, the sound was 100% Craig.
Yep.
So then, but you weren't on the pilot doing what you later did with the high road segments.
Oh my gosh, if you ever look at the pilot, I look so serious.
And you're in your smock.
My lab coat. Yeah,
your lab coat, because you were the auto technician on the show. You played the role.
Yeah, and it really was a role.
I'm here with our chief mechanic for MotorWeek, Craig Singhaus, and tonight we're going to show you how to do the most basic of all automotive maintenance. That's changing your motor oil and filter. Craig, most manufacturers recommend that you go 7,500 miles, or about 6 months, between oil and filter changes. Is that sufficient?
Well, John, it really depends on your driving habits. You see, urban stop-and-go driving is harder on motor oil than highway miles.
I knew a lot about a 66 Mustang. I knew a little bit about a Shelby Mustang. But as far as modern stuff, it was kind of like, well, let me go look that up kind of thing. But yeah, no, it was great. And I genuinely appreciate it because I was an enthusiast, but I did not have the depth of information. And by you giving me the opportunity to do the show, to work with you about presentation, to work with Pat Goss about specifics, questions that I had automotively, it launched my career. I was in the automotive business in one form or another through MotorWeek and some other training stuff for 44 years. So in reality, I owe my entire career to you and to Pat Goss.
Well, what Craig is alluding to is after we did the pilot for the show was 3 years before we got to go ahead for production. And by the time we did that, we needed someone that had the knowledge.
Yeah.
Because we had already decided at that point not to show how things were repaired because that was tough to do on TV, but to talk to the audience about car ownership, what they needed to know to talk to their technician. And that's where Pat Goss came in.
And really, he gave me two factors. He gave me the in-depth information about automobiles that I thought I had that obviously I really didn't. But the other factor is he taught me how to take something that was a fairly complex concept and bring it down so that it was correct. Mm-hmm. It was informational, but it was clear.
He was a teacher.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah.
He knew how to teach, even though he got his hands dirty all the time. He had done a lot of classes, I guess. Trying to get consumers to know more. Yeah,
when I met Pat, he was, he had decades of experience. Yeah. And then the other nice thing is, while I wasn't technically on air, I was the I guess, a segment associate producer. And I just learned so much by watching him, by learning not just automotive stuff, but how he would demonstrate things. And so, it was great. And then I would watch you do the actual presentation stuff over the overall show. And I really kind of built my career on the things that I learned from you two guys. So it was I'm very grateful, believe me.
So I'm curious. So in like the earliest of days when the MotorWeek was greenlit, what were you doing? Did you like do a little bit of everything? Were you working on the road tests? Were you helping in the studio, or what exactly?
I think the two things that I really brought to the show was my ability to pick up orange cones. Don't laugh. I was darn good at it.
We still have quite a few orange cones.
Because again, keep in mind, we thought we'd have like a 13-week run, maybe. We weren't sure it was going to be, given a full 26 weeks or 52 weeks. So I basically did everything. I mean, and again, it wasn't just by myself. There was a lot of other folks on the show. We all pitched in. There was very little hierarchy. It was the fun thing was.
Oh no! It was. John they say it's an ensemble cast.
Yeah, it really is. John,
still is.
We'd be out washing cars. John would come out and wash cars with us.
Right.
And then that was very exciting. So I mean, it was a community of car enthusiasts, and that's really, I think, what made the show initially kick off. Because again, we were not particularly well funded. We were making up the rules as we went along. So it was
because
fun.
Nobody had done this kind of show, and we needed, we looked at what the magazines were doing, and the whole idea was, okay, you've got a print magazine that comes out every month. How can we get a hold of those cars to test in a timely fashion so that folks can read the magazine, get all the details, and look at us and get all the video?
Well, and if you remember, that was right around the time that, I don't remember if it was 60 Minutes, whatever, but, Audi had the problem with the unintended acceleration, which turned out to be bogus. It was literally somebody putting their foot on the wrong pedal. But the point being, when they heard, hi, we're MotorWeek, and we're a television show, they went, television?
That's right.
They have not inspired us with confidence that they will tell the forthright story. So, yeah, it was fun. But it was challenging, that's for sure.
To touch on something you mentioned, I literally went around the parking lot at MPT and looked at who drove what. And if they drove something interesting, I would, and had the time to help us on MotorWeek, I'd tap them on the shoulder and say, hi, would you like to come play with cars with us? But tell me about how High Road and the segments there came about and how you made that transition. And what was that experience like? Because that was, we knew we had a show that we wanted to present new car information. We knew we had car care, but we had to do something that gave it a broader scope. So people that were just interested in cars, but something to entertain them.
Yeah, I think what you had presented to me is we want to explore not just the engineering, but the social aspect.
The love affair.
Exactly, the passion. And keep in mind, in the throughout the 70s, things were so slow. Cars were just got to be tools. They were not unimpressive. The designs weren't very exciting. And suddenly, in 1980, 81, there were some cars that had just a hint of excitement. Mm-hmm. And through the early 80s, the first Mustang GT, and then the Camaro came out and stuff. And the nice thing about me going on to on-air presentations was you had allowed all of us to be part of the road test process.
Right.
And so I remember you saying, all right, Craig, get in the car and futz around with the controls, and that's literally what we would do. We get in there and say, the radio's cool, and, and so.
We wanted to show how things operated, but how people interacted with the cars. And I had some training in that area when I was in college, ergonomics, and cars were getting better at that time. They were more convenient to use.
And the other fun thing I remember is because part of the appeal also for us was, we get to try new cars. We get to take them home.
Ooh.
Yeah, which was a big deal.
It was a big deal.
I was driving a 15, 16-year-old Mustang at that point. I didn't have anything cool or fancy, but we would take it home. And I remember one of the neat things you had us do is, you got it for the weekend? Are you going grocery shopping? Take the car and see what it's like to go to the grocery store with it. Because, frankly, while we did have lots of fun, exciting, sporty cars, a lot of them also were, it was the beginning of the minivan era. Mm-hmm. They still had station wagons and sedans and stuff.
Front-wheel drive family cars were just becoming in.
Yeah, so, the whole idea was let's not just look at all the sexy stuff. Let's look at the practical stuff. And that, I think that is really what initially attracted folks to it. People enjoy seeing the cool cars, but they may not be out looking for a two-door sports sedan. They may actually need a station wagon or a minivan, or in those days, the beginning of the crossover and SUV vehicles.
That's correct. When the early Jeep the Jeep Cherokees of the 1980s came out, that was really
that was a big deal.
The beginning of the family SUV market.
Well, and that kind of still is true today. Our most popular content is typically going to be the high volume cars. People want to know about the Camrys and the Corollas and the crossovers, the 4Runners or the Palisades and stuff like that. So yeah.
Well, I think that was the nice balance. Yes, we did do fun cars, and we were doing some fun stuff. I remember the first time we went to Summit Point Raceway. And I think one of our very first was we had in '82 or '83 we had a Porsche 928 and a Z28 Camaro. And if you looked at them, they were remarkably the same, except they were about, $45,000, $50,000 apart price-wise. And the interesting thing was, if you were looking at them strictly from performance, if memory serves me, when we ran around, the Camaro ended up about a half a second faster than the Z28 up on that track.
It certainly was faster in a straight line.
Still, the Camaro fairly flew across the finish line. And the time, are you ready? 1 minute, 38.3 seconds for an average speed of 73.25 miles per hour. Not only was that 1.7 seconds faster than the Porsche, but over 12 seconds faster than the early model Z28 we tested here last year.
The fun thing was, especially in the 80s through the early 90s, man, the industry was changing so much. So there was so much fun stuff it was interesting, not because it was fast or expensive. It was interesting because it was a new concept.
That was when technology in the automobiles really exploded.
Oh, yeah.
The first electronic ignition systems to come from the factory and all of that. You mentioned the tracks, and so let's stop and talk about that, because you had a huge part to play in where we test cars. From the beginning, we didn't want to just give impressions. We wanted to do formal testing. And it's gotten more sophisticated over the years. But for many, many years, we were at a drag strip called 7580 Dragway in Monrovia, Maryland, with Bill Wilkham, who was the owner and the late Bill Wilkham, a great man. But you're the one that basically got us in contact with Bill.
Well, I had gone up there on weekends and drove my little 16.5-second Mustang in the quarter mile, which nowadays a good Econo car would blow away. It was.
It's true.
No, it looked cool, but it wasn't.
Our commenters would be like, "That's dangerously slow."
It was. It was probably 0 to 60 in like 8 seconds or something. Maybe 8.5.
Can't merge on a highway with that.
No, but because you got to remember, coming out of the 70s, cars were they had put so much
smog
controls on them, but didn't have the technology to bring out the performance yet. And so cars had really gotten slow. 0 to 6. I remember, if we did 0 to 67.5 seconds in those days, it was kind of like, well, this is pretty peppy.
Remember, I had that Corvette, a 79 Corvette that had 175 horsepower from a big Vulcan.
Yeah, no, I remember that car vividly.
V8.
Yeah.
So.
It must have been a huge change going from testing at the Martin State Airport.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's because I think the first 8 or 10 shows we did it at Martin's.
And also, I don't know exactly the timeline of this, but we did use a closed down version of I-70
Well, they had
for
been
time.
Yeah, Interstate I-795 We did
I-70.
I-70
yeah.
And
inside
795.
the Baltimore Beltway, leading down to the Social Security complex because that was a dead end.
Right, and it was
closed.
It was a park and ride basically. If I remember
we
correctly.
also
It's park and ride today. Yeah.
Yeah.
We also used I-795 when it was being constructed,
Yes.
which
Yeah.
is an offshoot of the Baltimore Beltway.
I think
We did
viewers,
that.
if
and
you,
we did the airport.
would say if they look at old road tests,
Right.
where we're doing the track
Yeah.
testing, and the track is a little curved,
Yep.
and quite literally looks like
Oh,
a
it does.
highway.
It does.
We were using a highway.
The end of Route 70 literally went uphill because I remember.
Yeah.
I think it was we did a Isuzu diesel, if memory serves. And, we would always do. I think initially we were supposed to do 0 to 55, then they let us do 0 to 60, which is a more
That's true.
Because when we started out,
That was
the
the speed
national
limit.
speed limit
Yep.
was 55 miles an hour, and I remember the deal was we'd start out this little Isuzu diesel, and it was non-turbo, and we go up here. We never got it up to 60. We would run out of, it was like 17, 18 seconds, and we were starting to get to the point where the main traffic was feeding into Route 70, and it was like, all right, well, approximately 18, 19 seconds,
We were at Martin State Airport
Yeah.
for the early part, and I remember that when we were doing our acceleration runs, we had to be careful because just beyond where we were running, the MTA parked all their derelict buses.
Yeah.
Or else you ran into the river.
In Middle River,
In
yeah.
Middle River.
Because that was the old launch ramp for Martin when Martin was doing seaplanes
amphibious.
during the war. Yeah.
So then we transitioned from there to Interstate 70, which was still fairly new at that point. And I remember that winter, it was so icy, and we were out there trying to shoot, and we've got lots of cars in the ice spinning. Then we made the transition to 7580.
Yeah, well, and if you remember, there was a point, even after we went to 7580 for the first 1 or 2 years, Bill was worried about us driving on the pavement up there in the wintertime.
Right.
So, I think we were on and off down at the end of Route 70
Probably
for 2 or
so.
3 years, yeah.
But that's when we got the idea about going somewhere warm to do some winter testing. And you're the one that came up with Roebling Road Raceway outside of Savannah. You saw an ad. I'll refresh your memory.
Oh, yeah, you did. What was your name again? My memory isn't what it used to be.
No, you saw an ad in a magazine. I don't
Probably
know if it was
so, yeah.
Carcraft or what it was for a racetrack, a road course.
Yeah.
And it was, I think, $300 a day, and outside of Savannah. So you were responsible for getting us in contact with those folks as well.
Wow. Well, thank you. I don't remember that.
So and ever
Well, I
since
am
then,
an important guy. Yeah, hey.
you're an important guy to the history of the show. There's no question about that. And that's what got us starting going down there once or twice a year.
And that was
doing our
always
winter testing.
because if you remember, usually we're in the end of January.
Yep.
And a lot of times it was literally in the teens up here. It was not nice. And just to go down there where it was in the 50s, 50s, maybe 60 in the sun, it felt like we were, off to some exotic Caribbean place, a Caribbean racetrack,
Well, speaking of that, my favorite recollection of all the segments you did, and I'm going to ask yours in a minute, was when you went to the Bahamas for the classic races.
Yeah, Bahama Vintage Grand Prix. Yeah.
And where you went, you were at a party, I guess, post race.
Yeah, they would have, like receptions.
And you're the line. I'm sure I'll butcher it, but basically you had a conch fritter in your hand, and you were just. And I'd never even heard of it.
It's funny. I do remember that. It was. This is a conch fritter, and it is delicious. And you got to remember, I was a local kid who, I'd been to maybe Washington, D.C. and Hershey, Pennsylvania, but that's about the most time. And suddenly, I flew to Detroit, lost my plane ticket, if you remember the first time. You had to buy me the way home. Thanks for not leaving me there. And but suddenly, I'm going, a trip where I needed a passport, and that was really exciting for me. Between that and meeting people that as a kid I idolized. And then, next thing I know, it's lunch break, and then you sit down with, Carol Shelby or somebody like that, Don Garlitz. It was incredible. It'd be like if you were a baseball fan, you got to sit down. Yeah, let's go out for lunch
Willie Mays or
with
something.
Willie Mays or Babe Ruth. Yeah, exactly.
Let's talk about that since you got into there, and because you have met some extraordinary people that really shaped the American automobile industry.
Oh, absolutely.
In this 80s and 90s and 2000s. And I know you have a special affinity for Carroll Shelby. So let's stop because I think he deserves, a piece of your memories for this podcast.
Well, and there's no
Talk
doubt.
to me about the great Carroll Shelby and how you met him and what the relationship was over the years.
He was a very interesting guy. He wasn't a hardcore engineer, but he was an idea guy. He would come up with an idea, get the appropriate people to execute it, and do real well. I can't remember the first time I met him. It was some event. It might have been the Bahamas thing. I don't know. But the point being, I was like in awe of seeing Carroll Shelby, and he's a really nice guy. Actually, not hoity-toity.
No, not at all.
Just a regular guy. Good Texas guy. And I'm like, oh, Mr. Shelby, it's such an honor to meet you. And he goes, oh, just call me Carroll. Yes, Mr. Shelby. I don't think I ever called him Carroll. And I think he really wanted me to. The other interesting thing about him is, aside for his automotive genius, when he would see you, he genuinely made you feel like
he knew you.
He knew you.
Yes.
And he might not remember your name, but he'd remember something about you. And at that point, back in the 90s, I had a yellow Mustang. Well, in the 60s, when they had done Trans Am, his Trans Am Mustangs, the ones that raced in Trans Am racing, had been painted yellow. And I remember one time I showed him, I got a yellow Mustang too, and so and they called it. I think the color was god awful yellow or something. Literally, that's what they called it. And it was like a school bus color. Well, I had sponsorship from Pennzoil, and so my car was very similar. And the funny thing is, he wouldn't see me for a year sometimes, and I'd run into him, and he might not remember my name, but he'd go, you still have that yellow Mustang? And man, it made
you feel like $1 million.
Oh, yeah, it did, because I was like, I'm recognized by Carroll Shelby. He was terrific. And you got to remember, I was 10 years old in 1966 when the Shelby Mustangs were first coming out. The Cobras were coming on strong. Ford had gone to Le Mans. And so I was a kid in that era when American automotive influence had gone international. So I was really excited. And so to meet the creator of the Shelby Mustang. And years later, I actually, I got a Shelby Mustang. It was a barn find. I found it, with no fenders from nothing from the firewall forward to the fenders, and the whole front end was off of it. But the point being, to make that emotional connection with him was remarkable. And again, you'd run into him 2 years later, and when he would talk to you, it was like, he was the neighbor from up the street. It was a remarkable thing.
I didn't know him nearly as well as you did or meet him as many times, but I was always amazed. He was one of these folks that could make you feel like he knew you as a best friend.
Yes,
like you
he
said,
really
like
did.
a neighbor, and instantly at ease. So this is a hard one, I think, for someone in your position. You were just saying before we even started the podcast how you're amazed at all the segments that you did.
Oh, yeah.
Can you give us an idea of 2 or 3 maybe that really stood out in your minds? And how did you develop the high road segments? When you had an idea or the idea came over the transom or from me or whatever, what was the process? Because you had some assistants.
Yeah, oh yeah. I had a lot of mentorship. Well, and here's the thing. Frankly, when I first found out I was going to be an on-air person, and I had no idea what I was doing. And I'm not being facetious. I remember we went to...
I don't think any of us did.
Yeah, I think we went to our first shoot. I think it was the Rear View Mirror Museum down in the Carolinas somewhere. And I'm supposed to be doing interviews, and Taylor Baxter, who was
our editor,
yeah, my guy, he's like, you have to ask them questions. You don't just stick a camera and a microphone in front of their face. And I'm like, oh. And then he was like, ask them questions so that they know how to answer. So what you say is, tell me about how enthusiastic you are.
Yeah.
And they go, yeah, I'm really enthusiastic about this. So we could edit out my question and then string their comments together. And literally, Taylor
Like
taught me.
TV 101.
Yeah, it really was. Because, again, I had done theater and stuff. I'd done a lot of theater, but I had never done any kind of journalistic type of thing. And it was fun. I mean, we were doing stuff. Taylor worked with me. I mean, in many respects, he taught me how to assemble the thoughts together. Because if you remember, my segments were between 2.5 and 3.5 minutes. So you had to be pretty concise to get the story. It had a beginning, a middle, and then an appropriate end and stuff like that. And so I learned from him and from other people. And Lisa was really good at it.
Lisa Barrow.
Yeah, Lisa Barrow was great. And so I learned to watch her, how she was assembling her stuff. So it was definitely a learn as you earn experience. But it was fun. And had I known at the time how little I actually knew, I probably would have been intimidated. But I was 24, 26 years old. And I'm like, oh yeah, I can do this.
Well, I think we all basically were, we were given a freedom by the management at MPT at the times to develop this. They wanted to see what we could do.
Yeah.
So we really didn't have a lot of bounds. And I have to stop and pay homage to a gentleman who did a lot of the work that led me into figuring out how to do a road test. And he was the legendary journalist and PR guy, Bill Baker.
Oh, yeah.
Bill
I remember
had
Bill,
done
yeah.
some road tests for dealers when he worked for Automotive News. And I got a hold of one of those tapes, and it was how to do a walk around a car, what to look for.
Yeah.
It was instructions for dealers on basically how to demonstrate a car for their customer. That was very instrumental because around that concept, I could see how you could make it into something that would be suitable for TV that would fit into a time and all. But I got you off the topic.
Oh, that's all right.
Favorite segments and
favorite
why?
segments. And again, anything to do, I did some stuff that was associated with Carroll Shelby. I mean, we went to Monterey historic races when they, that was the Shelby was the honored mark that year, and I did a story about in those days it was the Carroll Shelby Heart Fund, which is now basically the Shelby Foundation, where he raises money, especially for kids who would need medical assistance and stuff. So that was fantastic, and again, a lot of it was just. It was exciting because it was new. Like, again, the Bahamas vintage car race was great.
You went all over the world, though.
Oh, yeah, I really did. I mean, I went to Tokyo. For a little kid from Eldersburg, Maryland, to go to Tokyo was a big deal.
Well, there was a part there. You did a whole segment that was separate from High Road where you Roadside America.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'd forgotten about that. Yeah, they were like 2 minutes long.
Yes,
yeah.
And so I'm thinking of actually because it also starred Brian Roberts, who
from our staff,
from our staff,
who's senior executive producer,
executive producer now, but once upon a time was your assistant.
Oh yeah,
and you guys drove down to Daytona in a Mustang.
You don't remember? Roadside America.
Yeah, I remember.
Quickie segments.
I think we went to Daytona.
Stops.
We went to.
You saw Cape Canaveral?
Cape Canaveral, right. Mm-hmm. And I hate to admit this, but the one thing that I remember of that part is we got on this crazy thing that spun you around, and it was supposed to be for training astronauts. And poor Brian
Centrifuge.
he got so motion sick. I thought, well, he's gonna die before we get home.
But
that's good. You do remember that.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it seemed like a cool trip. I mean, it had the humor. You guys were just having fun driving down the A1A.
It was fun.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody got rich on MotorWeek, especially in the early days. But as far as having fun, because I always figured, what would I do if I was rich? I would do these things. Well, heck, I'm going to do them anyway through MotorWeek. Yeah, so because I remember we went down there, and if memory serves me, we were supposed to meet Bill France. And Bill had gotten,
Bill France, the head of
senior.
NASCAR.
Yeah,
at the
exactly.
time. Senior.
And he was pretty senior by then, So we went in there, and it was me and a guy named Jack Griffith who had the Griffith car.
Griffith
and,
Motors.
And Bill's like, well, you all want to ride around the track a little bit? And I'm like, and he says, no, I'll climb in my station wagon and we'll go. And at that point, for the high-speed stuff, Bill had a driver for him. And we're going around Daytona racetrack at like 130 mile an hour in a station wagon. A big old Pontiac
with
station
the founder of NASCAR.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it was a really interesting situation.
Wow. I mean, yeah, you can, when you watch pretty much most of the segments that you were involved in, you can just tell how much fun.
Oh, I was having a blast. Well, and the funny thing is, to this day, somebody will send me something on Facebook or through one of the MotorWeek contact stuff, and they'd be like, "Hey, we just found this," and I'll look and I go, "Oh my gosh, I don't even remember doing it." Oh yeah, and then I watch it and then I remember almost everything about it. So it's really fun. I think of fun ones we did. Like obviously, let's say the high road was fun. The Roadside America stuff was fun. And so. And Roadside America was basically the idea is it was if you were on a family vacation and saw something interesting, hey, let's pull over and look at that. Right. So it was a blast, And to be honest with you, we didn't just drive around. We would look for interesting roadside, and sometimes we would. We're doing a segment up that way. On the way the day before, we'll shoot a Roadside America. Right. So it was a lot of fun. We did
try and we were very efficient, but there was another reason in that you drove everywhere you could because you didn't like to fly.
Oh yeah, I was terrified to fly.
Here's a man that does World War II reenactments by jumping out of airplanes, but in those days you weren't really crazy about flying.
Yeah, I had only flown once or twice, and I was so scared about I got up to Detroit, I was okay, and again oh my gosh, that's Woodward Avenue, all these things that I had read about as a kid. On the way back, I think I was so nervous and I was almost shaking, because I was terrified of flying. So yeah,
Really,
I lost my ticket. John had to buy me. He's like, "Okay, kid, don't lose the next one."
And I did in the days of paper tickets.
Yeah, and I did pay you back.
Wait, so. We do. I mean, I do a lot of flying now. For travel, and so I don't know. Would you go on like a press preview for like a new car?
We would do that. Yeah. We would. And
would you fly?
Yeah,
like if it was in California.
He would fly if he had to. Okay, but if he could drive to.
Yeah, no. And frankly, if something was 12, I mean, we drove to Detroit a lot.
Sure.
It was 10, 12 hours.
But with gear, with lots of gear, of course. You had a videographer with you. And
absolutely.
And in those days, you probably had an engineer or audio person as well. Yeah.
So sometimes it was a little entourage, and we would drive up, and it was a long day. But, and the other thing is, if we were footing the bill, we had to be budget conscious.
Right.
And so, therefore, it's like, well, can we save $350 by, and in those days,
that was a lot of money.
It was a lot of money for us in those days. So yeah. Well, it'll take an extra half a day, but let's drive and save the money. That way we can save the money up and make, because you sure couldn't drive to the Bahamas to do the vintage car race. A little soggy at that point. But yeah, I mean, it was a lot of fun.
But the humor that you brought to all your segments, and those of you that watch a lot of our MotorWeek retro road tests on our marathons, you see Craig, and especially in the muscle car segments, and when we would do comparisons, the humor that you brought to even the road test, frankly, we've never been able to replace. I mean, you made them,
it's very nice.
Because everything we do needs to be informative, but we want people to be entertained and enjoy it.
Well, it's a great example of that.
You did it great.
The one that sticks out in my mind, specifically with the road test, is arguably one of our most popular YouTube videos ever. It has like over 1 million views. I think it has like 1.5 million views. Wow. And it's the muscle car comparison from the 1980s.
Mustang, the Firebird, and the Camaro.
Yes, where you guys are all pulling up to the Dairy. Yeah, it's not a Dairy Queen. It's like is it Dairy Queen?
Yeah, it was a Dairy Queen. Nack's Dairy Queen, down by
there you go.
BWI, Baltimore Washington Airport.
round, round, get around. I get around, round, round. I get around, you get around.
Hi, what do you have?
Yeah, a burger, fries, and a Coke. And my Mustang GT will eat that Trans Am for lunch.
Oh yeah? Isn't that Mustang an F-O-R-D as in found on road dead?
Hey, that's first on race day.
What a crock. This new IROC Camaro will blow you both into the weeds.
There's only one place to settle this. The racetrack.
It was kind of based on stuff that I had experienced and stuff that was kind of like, well, I don't really have the money to do this. But I can do it through MotorWeek. And all kidding aside, that was a lot of it. Yeah. I had been to Next Dairy Queen with my car a couple of times, and I knew a lot of the folks in the community. And I thought, well, where would 3 car nuts with 3 brand new cars and muscle cars pull? I thought, well, let's do it at the Next Dairy. And I contacted Jimmy Knack, Jimmy Knack, and he put me in contact with some of the other regulars there. And so we had people who volunteered to bring their cars, and so we parked it around, and we shot there for a day. Then we went to 7580, and we shot there for a day. And then we went to Pocono International Raceway and shot there for the day.
It was you, Max Balton, and Michael Goldsmith, who was a videographer.
Yeah, but a really good driver.
And
Mike
a great
was
driver.
Yeah,
he raced.
Yeah,
he
exactly. He did SCCA.
Yeah.
And so, and it was fun because, and some of it was planned out, but some of it was just the
spontaneity.
Way. Yeah, it's kind of like, oh, this happened. Well, let's make something interesting about that. I remember the big deal was the Mustang I drove and the Firebird that I drove had carburetors. The Camaro was fuel injected, and so it turned out that the Mustang and the Firebird were just a skosh faster than the Camaro. And so we did this funny thing where, because earlier Mike had been going on, everybody was bragging, my car will beat your car. Yeah, my Mustang's got exhaust on it the size of sewer pipes, and Mike was like, well, you're old fashioned, my car is fuel injection. Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, we got up there and again, it might have been 3 or 4 mile an hour at most top end speed. But the point being, I remember jumping up and down with Max going, so much for, fuel injection. This car has carburetors. And again, you got to remember, a lot of people really identified us with this segment. And everybody thought, absolutely, Craig's a Mustang person. And in those days, I did like Mustangs because I had one. But, it was kind of a role we were playing. And we had so much fun doing that stuff. So, yeah, it was good times. I mean, people, say, well, if you enjoy what you're doing, you never really work a day in your life. And I must say, the almost 24 years that I was associated with MotorWeek, first with the high road segment and then coming back and doing some freelance stuff with y'all, it was incredibly fun.
Was it the most fun you ever had working?
Yeah, without a doubt.
It was when Craig initially left the show and then you came back freelancing. Those were tough years for us.
Oh, my God,
we basically weren't sure we were going to remain on the air.
About what years were we talking?
98.
That was when you left full-time.
Yep.
And then you did freelance.
Yeah, you hired me back.
To like 2004, I guess.
Yeah.
And
I think I did 1 or 2 other ones over the.
It's public television. Public television is always short of money.
Oh yeah,
and we were certainly in that boat. But you were so instrumental in establishing the show's identity as a fun and entertaining place to learn about cars.
You were a good sport because you would let me
do just about anything. I got 2.5, 3 minutes to fill, Craig. Help me.
Yeah, well, and the other fun thing is even when we were doing the road test, and I remember I had like a Snoopy aviator's hat, and for some reason, I ended up jumping in through the
window.
Jumping in through the
the sunroof.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then when we did the Monte Carlo SS, the first, because it was based on a moonshine car, I had this kind of Ozark Mountain Daredevil's hat, you know, and so on. And the first time I went to jump in through the window, not opening the door, I jump in, I got about 3/4 away, and I fell back out.
That's on our blooper reel.
Yeah, and if memory serves me, that made it into the show.
It did.
Yeah.
It did, yeah.
So, you know, that kind of fun spontaneity stuff was just incredible. And again, you know, there would be some folks in this industry, in the automotive industry, you know, we're so serious about ourselves. We know we have a reputation. And John was like, oh, that looks kind of fun and interesting. Let's put it in there. So he allowed us as individuals. And again, there was a lot of us, you know, not the number of staff you have now, because you have the online side, which, by the way, I'm thrilled. You know, it's great to see so many people involved with the show now. But, you know, we all had a vital part. We all brought something to the table, so to speak. And John allowed that. And so that was what was so fun.
You know, I think that's probably just the best way we could possibly end this podcast, is just on, you brought such a great joy, I think, to the show and to the many viewers, and I really want to thank you very much for coming on the podcast today.
It should be, because if you remember, I was literally the first MotorWeek employee. I don't think Max started till like the week afterwards, and you know, and so
you were because of what you drove and your reputation around the building. I tapped you on the shoulder first.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I remember you handed me a bunch of CarCraft and Motor Trend and Car and Driver, and said, "Here, kid, read these, learn something. We're going to start shooting in a couple of weeks."
And we did, and here we are, 45 years later.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Craig.
My pleasure. This has been a wonderful opportunity to reminisce. It's great to see you.
Same here.
Jessica's wonderful to see you. And literally, to this day, I look at MotorWeek and my experience here as literally the highlight of my life in many ways.
Well, it certainly has been mine.
Oh, yeah, I guess.
Part of that's meeting you.
Well, thank you, sir.
Hey, I want to thank everybody out there for watching our podcast. I want to thank our sponsors first and foremost for not only the podcast, but also our series MotorWeek. The great folks at Auto Value and Bumper to Bumper, thank you very much, and TireRack.com. Terrific people. We know our viewers and listeners all over the place thank you for your dedication to all things MotorWeek. And don't forget, regardless of whether you are watching MotorWeek on a TV or on your phone or tablet, you can stay up with everything that happens with our series, our road test, all our features, by downloading the totally free MotorWeek app. It's the quickest way to stay up with all things MotorWeek. Thanks, Craig, and thank you for listening and watching today. If you're wondering what time you can watch MotorWeek on your local public television station, go to our website, motorweek.org, put in your zip code after you hit the Watch MotorWeek area, and it'll give you all the times that you can see it. Or hop over to Racer Network and Racer.com, our cable partner, and take a look at their schedule. You can also watch recent episodes on the free PBS app, and we're proud that we're now part of the Tubi streaming library. And all of our individual road tests and features are also available, as we mentioned before, at youtube.com/MotorWeek. If you've got a screen, you can watch MotorWeek. Podcast producer today, Jessica Ray. Audio engineer, David Wainwright. Podcast creator, Bob Mixter. Remember, for the fastest way to find car reviews, be sure to include MotorWeek in your search engine. I'm John Davis. Thank you for being a part of MotorWeek.
You've been listening to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by Auto Value and Bumper to Bumper and TireRack.com. Visit our website at motorweek.org for more car reviews and the latest automotive news. And watch MotorWeek, television's longest-running automotive magazine series, each week on your local PBS station or the MotorWeek app.